there is no hope. Like, what else am I going to do with my life? I don't have anything else left in my life. It's only going to get darker. It's only going to get more painful, and it's only going to become much more of a struggle, because the pain is not going to go away until I get that success. But I'm going to keep fighting. I know that I'm going to keep going, because now I know I have to. I don't have any choice. The only way I get out of this, the only way I find happiness, is if I ascend. Until I get that first girl who actually desires me enough to actually do stuff with me, for me to actually get laid, like, without paying for it. Until I get that, like, I'm still going to be in the situation where I'm unhappy. So by July 13, 2023, I will get laid without paying for it. I will find a girl who's willing to do that with me. I will be desirable enough to get that. I am coming up whether you like it or not. À-bas-le-ciel said, oh, he's only got like 10-20% maybe, and he's gonna reach the limits of what he can do to improve his body. It's obvious that I've got maybe 10-20 kilos of muscle mass to gain. If you look at what Lyle McDonald said on the estimates of how much muscle mass you can gain naturally, he said 20 to 25 pounds of muscle mass in the first year of natural training is, in the first year of serious training, is realistic for a natural male.
Alright, we start out in high school. Here's my junior year. So this is about 130 pounds. I'm about 16 years old here. I was putzing around in my basement, really not knowing a whole lot of what was going on, but this was when I was really starting to kind of like get into bodybuilding, starting like to roll up my sleeves and shit and try to show off my arms. 18 years old, 140 pounds, 100% natural, no steroids, didn't touch anything. So that was literally like a year of serious training and actually eating the right way. I did this for like about 2 years in the natural leagues, and then I decided to jump on steroids, which led us to this photo. 273 pounds in my basement, my parents' basement. I went from 173 natural to 230 in 10 weeks. This is about a week or so out from the 2006 Body Rock, which was like the biggest regional show down here. I think I want to weigh 193 for that show, so I was probably sitting about 196 right here.
I've looked at all those calculators of how much muscle mass I can gain, what my genetic potential could be, and yeah, it's somewhere around 62 kilos in contest condition. So maybe 65 kilos at a more reasonable body fat percentage. I know some people say, oh, it's not enough, you're lazy, you're not doing anything, you're eating crap, all of this sort of thing, and you're not doing anything to change your situation, you're not putting in the effort. That's all it's going to be, and I bet as soon as I upload this, there'll be some more bullshit. And à-bas-le-ciel said, oh, it's not going to work. You have the body of a child.
This is the kind of topic that is shallow and deep at the same damn time. And I am not offended in the least by people asking shallow questions, such as, where can this guy get laid anyway? The answer I want to give you is an answer that is equally true for you and you and you in the audience. And some of you are like 18 years old and you've never thought about it this way before. And some of you are 48 years old and you've never thought about it this way before. I can get laid anywhere that I am perceived as a sophisticated person. Where are you perceived as a sophisticated person? Because I am suggesting whoever you are in this audience, it's true for you too. If you have devoted your life to just playing video games and watching anime movies, you're going to have a real hard time. Maybe you can go to a video game conference. You go to one of these anime cosplay conventions, and maybe people there will perceive you as sophisticated and perceive you as well informed, but for really obvious reasons. You can't get laid. You can't have a meaningful connection with a member of the opposite sex that's going to lead to a long-term relationship. And you can't even have a connection with a member of the opposite sex that's going to lead to one shameful night in a hotel room. And I don't think I have to explain to you why that is. It would be really easy for someone born and raised in New York City to say, oh, go to art gallery openings. There are lots of beautiful women at art gallery openings. It'd be easy for someone from Paris to say this, Hong Kong, Milan, really any major city around the world. Oh, yeah, go find a girlfriend, go get laid at art gallery openings. Would you be perceived as a sophisticated person if you went to an art gallery opening? Do you know what you're talking about? Do other people appreciate you as presenting an informed opinion that reflects years of prior research when you go to an art gallery opening? Now, a lot of this video is going to be dripping with toxic masculinity. I invented the hashtag Toxic Masculinity 101 because I actually see myself as instructing the audience positively in toxic masculinity. But I've got to put in a disclaimer here for this reason, that the advice I would give to women under this setting is not that different from the advice I've given to men. And I have given this advice to women over the last 8 years on this YouTube channel, again and again and again. Nina and Randa, the original female gym cell duo. You might think it's easy for them. You might think it's easy for them to get laid. You might think it's easy for them to find a man. They spend their whole lives at the gym. They have been employed as instructors and trainers at the gym. And they've said a million times that really all they're looking for is a kind of male bimbo. They want to be with a male bodybuilder, a man who has that kind of physique. What happens when they get to the gym? Those men have options. Those men have alternatives. If you're competing just in that lane, if you're competing just on those criteria for those men, even in Los Angeles, even if you're born rich and are somewhat successful or somewhat famous on social media, it turns out that's a really tough row to hoe, even for women. What makes you think it's going to be easy for you as a man? There are some women who are looking for men who have low body fat and impressive muscles. There are some. It's a small number of women, and they have a lot of options. The odds are, if you're competing on those criteria alone, you're competing for a small number of women, and each and every one of them has a better option than you. So why did you choose to compete in this way on the basis of these criteria for these few women? Why did you put yourself in that disadvantageous position. Now, there were many ways in which this guy decline is just revolting to behold. He's intellectually revolting, he's morally revolting, he's physically revolting. Everything about him is revolting. But what I find interesting about the guy, the reason why I really think he's worth criticizing, is that if you watch his videos, many of the points I've made, he has made himself briefly and in passing as a kind of self-criticism. He knows there's some truth to what I'm saying here. What if this guy, as physically repulsive as he may be, what if instead of putting his time into computer programming, what if instead of putting his time into video games, anime, what if he had become a fashion designer? What if he had thrown all of his energy and attention into understanding the world of design and fashion? This guy, can you imagine him being in a social context where he is regarded as sophisticated, where he is a sophisticated, well-informed person, and where there are women who walk up to him and have conversations with him just on that basis? And you know what? A lot of those women, they would probably begin the conversation assuming he's gay, or a lot of homosexual men who work in women's fashion, women design, and a lot of those women would probably walk up to him and begin the conversation feeling no attraction towards him. But because they respect him, because they perceive him as sophisticated, then they're willing to find him interesting. Then they're willing to find him intelligent. Then they're willing to have lunch with him. And a few would be willing to have a sexual relationship, whether that is a meaningful, long-term, high-commitment relationship or one shameful night in a hotel somewhere. Let me tell you something, guys. If you think that it is only highly intelligent, highly intellectual women who want to be with a highly intelligent, highly intellectual man, you're a fucking teenage virgin who doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. You have no idea how many bimbos, how many totally unrepentant bimbos, women who have just devoted their life to the pleasures of the senses, preening their own appearance, etc. You have no idea how many women want to be with a highly intelligent, highly ethical man who can do the thinking for them. Now, all my life, there have been intellectual women who pursued me, but there have also been bimbos. There have been bimbos of every stripe, every color, every cultural background. On this planet, the stupid, shallow people outnumber the brilliant, deep people by about 10,000 to 1. Trust me, I've seen it. I've seen this side of human nature, and most of you in the audience haven't. And you haven't because, on the one hand, there may be no cultural context at all within which you are perceived as a sophisticated person. And then, if there is a cultural context like that, it's something like video games. It's something like anime or Batman movies. That's what you've poured your time and attention and effort into. And that's the only theater in which you're perceived as sophisticated. So let me just come back to briefly here this kind of critique from the audience. There are people in the audience who demand to know in what context I can get laid. So I'm now 43. We could talk about me at 33. We could talk about me at 23. But to be honest, I feel that this holds for most men in most circumstances in life. When I was living in Thailand as a white man often staying in hotels and guest houses, meeting white women who were at those guest houses. A lot of you missed the point before. I talked about this, but you assumed I was talking about sleeping with Thai women, something I've never done, by the way. When a guy like me meets other white Western tourists in Thailand, what kind of conversation eventuates? So these are white women from Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, France, and they're there in Thailand partly because they're interested in the history of Thailand, they're interested in going to visit a museum, they're interested in Buddhism, they're interested in going to see Buddhist temples, and then they meet a guy like me who's really knowledgeable about all those things. A guy like me who, even if I don't want to go with them, I can have a conversation and say, yeah, I can talk to the cab driver for you. Yeah, I speak a mix of Thai and Laotian. I speak enough of the local language. I'll tell the taxi driver where to take you. They meet a guy who's highly competent, highly capable in that slightly terrifying cultural context, right? They meet a guy whom they perceive to be sophisticated. And that's the start of the conversation. That's the start of them perceiving me as someone interesting, someone intelligent, someone they want to have lunch with, someone they want to have dinner with. Even now, even in my mid-40s, I could sleep with an infinite number of white European women in Thailand if I wanted to. And I've been reminded of this option recently because I had to go to Thailand for a court case and then fly back. Wasn't what I was there for, wasn't what I was looking for, but I was reminded of that. Okay, now let's just do two other really quick thought experiments. What if I were to go to Israel and start getting involved in Israeli politics? Okay? In mainstream Israeli politics, for many years, I would not be perceived as a sophisticated person. What do I know about Israeli politics? Right? I'm some guy who just showed up from Canada, speak English, either don't speak Hebrew at all or can just barely manage a few words. I don't have any depth of knowledge of Israeli politics. If I go to mainstream political events in Israel, okay, very unlikely that a woman is going to be interested in me. It's not impossible. Women are interested in me when I'm at the grocery store. Well, like seriously, I go almost nowhere. Women cold approach me when I'm not looking and I'm not interested here in Canada, basically everywhere I've been in the world. That's my experience in life. If you guys don't want to believe it or accept it, it is what it is. What are you going to do? I'm offering you advice from the basis of my life experience. I'm someone who's been married and had a child and gotten divorced. I've had a number of long-term meaningful relationships. And the advice I'm giving you is not about how to have a whole ton of one-night stands. It's about how to have meaningful relationships. But, yeah, I'm someone who's had the option to have short-term meaningless relationships. The option presented to him. Someone who's had women approaching me my whole life long, and it still happens. Okay. So let's say I'm in Israel, and I'm kind of a know-nothing fool in that political and cultural context. But now I go to a Buddhist studies conference. People talking about the history and politics of Buddhism. In that context, suddenly I'm one of the most sophisticated people there. I have many years of research behind me on this. I go to a vegan politics conference. Suddenly, I'm perceived as one of the most sophisticated people there, even if I don't speak a word of Hebrew. So it is inevitable that some women are somehow going to come out of the woodwork and approach me. And by the way, so far, I've only been talking about women approaching me. I haven't said one word in this video about me actually initiating, me going out and approaching women. So this is where it starts to get real toxic masculinity 101. It's very rare that I recommend a book, but I'm going to recommend this book right here that you see on screen. I'm going to recommend this book to each and every person watching this video, male or female. It's a very cheap book. I remember it being a pretty short and easy book to read, but I already have a lot of historical background in the topic. This book deals with two taboo topics: physical ability versus physical disability, mental ability versus mental disability. It deals with innate and insuperable inequality in the context of recruiting people into the American military. It also deals with a lot of interesting questions about what happened in the Vietnam War, what went wrong, and why. Just also interesting. But in terms of what I'm talking about in this video, there are a lot of things that are really important for you guys to reflect on that are in this book, and this book doesn't say one word about dating, about relations between the sexes. This book leads you to question why it is that some men can become muscular and some can't, even when we're not talking about the level of muscularity necessary to win a bodybuilding contest. When we're talking about the level of musculature necessary to pass the bare minimum standard to get into the U.S. Marine Corps, to be able to throw a grenade, to be able to climb up a ladder. They have this series of tests. Okay, those are really hard questions to deal with. These are probably questions your parents never talked to you about and your grandparents never talked to you about. I guarantee your church pastor never talked to you about it. But this is a profound inequality, right? And we don't even want to think about it when we're talking about sexual reproduction, when it really is the most important thing. Both men and women do not want to have a mentally disabled child. They also don't want to have a physically disabled or physically disadvantaged child. They don't get to have a choice, right? They just get to choose who they sexually reproduce with. And on the basis of the very imperfect evidence of how their innate traits are displayed in their lives, right? People make a judgment. Yes, this is someone I'm going to combine my DNA with. I'm going to roll the dice and hope I get a highly intelligent, strong-willed, physically vital child. Or no, there's something wrong here. There's some kind of red flag. This isn't someone you'd want to have a child with. Okay. Now, I'm interested in the political dimension of this, not just in the relationship between this generation and the next one, but within one generation, relationships of authority. Saw a YouTube video recently. I just showed another horrifying example of police brutality in the United States of America. And I will give you my opinion. This example of the police pouncing on a whole family. It's a whole family who were in the car together and just pummeling them into submission for no reason at all. I don't think it was motivated by racism. I think fundamentally the problem was the stupidity of the police officers. And in this particular case, once the videotape evidence of what happened came out, people in the press started looking through the record of the police officers involved in this beating and saying, look, there are more than 100 past complaints about misconduct here. We want to pretend that there's no relationship between ethical characteristics and intellectual characteristics. Like we want to pretend that you can be a stupid person and at the same time be a morally good person. But being a morally good person involves figuring out from day to day and moment to moment and year to year, figuring out what the right thing to do is. Being moral requires and involves intelligence, curiosity, research, learning all the time. Not just when you're a child or teenager, but as you proceed through your middle age years. Choosing who would be a good soldier in the U.S. Army, who would be a good soldier to send to Vietnam, it's not easy. Choosing who would be a good police officer. What if we just recruited the police the same way we recruit people for the Army, solely on the basis of physical strength, physical characteristics? What if it was mere athleticism? That was the sole basis on which we recruited and promoted the police. You can see the vast majority of police are not in impressive shape. They're not in good shape compared to the guys you meet at the gym working as coaches and trainers. What are the criteria? Intellectual, ethical, educational, whereby we choose the police. I say this as someone who's researched it. I say this as someone who's written a 600-page book talking about it. I say it as someone who has himself applied to join various police forces and have applied to join the military and have therefore seen exactly what the testing involves, exactly what criteria are applied to you, and strangely what criteria are not. We are wondering, isn't anyone going to ask about ... and nobody asks. I've seen my share of forms that ask you to sign a declaration that you're not racist. I bet that works. That sort of thing. Sign a declaration that you haven't smoked marijuana in the last 10 years. And we all know, in theory, someone could be a wonderful police officer who just quit smoking marijuana 6 months ago. And someone could be a terrible police officer who's been sober their whole life long. Deciding who would be a good soldier and deciding who would make a good police officer, it's so difficult because it's not one thing you're hiring somebody for. The nature of the job involves improvisation. It involves the response to circumstances unknowable and unknown. The particular video I saw of the police, the fundamental problem was they were told to watch out for a white sedan, a white car. And they pulled over, of course, there are a lot of white cars on the road. They pulled over a random white car that had nothing to do with the crime concerned. The people inside the car didn't match the description any other way. And the cops just freak out and start brutalizing and beating these people. As a police officer, you're dealing with unanticipated circumstances. The stress and the challenge and the fear that arises from an unanticipated circumstances again and again and again. What is the capacity that makes one man able to cope with that? One man able to be morally exemplary in those circumstances and makes another man despicable. That, in brief, is what women are looking for when they're looking for a man. And I'm going to go so far as to say, whether they're conscious of it or not, that's what they're looking for and that's what they're responding to, whether it's the man they're going to marry, the man they're going to get pregnant with, the man they're going to have children with, or it's a man they're really just looking for a couple nights in a hotel room with. And gentlemen, if you're smart, you'll be looking for a woman using the same criteria yourself. You won't just be trying to bed down any bimbo who looks good in Gymshark pants.